Welcome to Alter Your Algorithm, a podcast where we talk about what we focus on and how we can make sure it's Jesus. I'm Jackson.
Tyler.
Thank you for joining us this week. Today we have a guest, Jacob Bealle. Tyler, why don't you introduce Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob is from here, from Hopkinsville. He is the founder of Props for Purpose, and they specialize in disaster relief, animal rescue, and medical transport. But that's not all. Just kind of the conversation we've already had with Jacob. It's going to be a great episode, and we're looking to kind of learn a little bit more about what he does and his organization. Jacob, you want to just tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jacob, and right now I'm currently a former native of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I live in Nashville. I'm studying undergraduate sciences at Belmont University. Over the past few years, I picked up a passion for aviation. During high school, I started flying, basically got interested in aviation off of a video game. A video game.
Was it Flight Simulator?
It was a flight simulator. Microsoft Flight Simulator. I don't know if you've seen the advertisements for it or not, but I called a local flight instructor and I was like, hey, I really want to fly. Like, what can I do? And it took some convincing to my parents because they weren't just all like, oh, yeah, go hop in a plane. But, it took the first what's called a discovery flight, and it kind of took off from there, which, my 16th birthday after flying with a flight instructor, I soloed an airplane for the first time by myself. And funny backstory on that is, my parents could drive me to the airport, but here in Kentucky, you can't drive by yourself. Right when you turn 16, you have to have somebody with you. And so my parents would drive me to the airport. I would fly around, and then they'd have to come back to the airport, and they'd pick me up. That's crazy.
Wow.
And then so after that, fast forwarding, 17th birthday, got my fixed wing private pilot's license. And then about 2 years ago, got my instrument rating in the airplane. And then just this past week, passed my helicopter check ride. So a dual rated pilot now. And just over a few years, I've been able to come about Props for Purpose. So
That's 16. That's hard to believe.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. You mentioned there's some terminology that you said just then that we're going to come back to, but like you said, 16 is pretty awesome. To find your passion that early is great, and then to know that you're finding ways to use it to serve Christ, your passion to serve Christ is really, really awesome. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about allowing our faith to guide us through the course of our life, trusting God with the quote-unquote flight plan, even when we can't always see where we're headed. Maybe at 16 you knew you were going to go to Belmont to study undergrad for this, maybe, but who would have thought that it would have turned into to what it is now, which you're able to serve people in disaster relief. Right. So let's ask some of those questions. How did Props for Purpose come to life?
Yeah, so in 2021, I don't know if you guys remember when the tornadoes ripped. I think it was like December of 2021.
December 10th, 2021. Yeah. I remember the day. Yeah.
And ripped across Princeton, Mayfield, Graves County, areas like that. And one of our good friends was affected in Princeton, and we called them the next morning trying to get a hold of them, couldn't get a hold of them. Like landlines were down. It was a ghost town. We tried to drive over there, and their power lines were down, roads were blocked off, so you couldn't get into the city, but you could leave. So I kind of just had this weird idea. I was like, Dad, I'm a pilot's license now. Let's just see if we can go over there to, it was my dad's physician's assistant. I was like, let's see if we can go over there and at least make sure they're okay. And so we hop in the plane, get over there, and lo and behold, I was like, hey, this could work. And we start getting over there, and it's almost like a landmine. Nobody's there to help out. And it's like, that's when God hit me, and I was like, okay, this might be something we can do. And so came back to Hopkinsville and started making a post on Facebook. I was like, hey, are there any volunteer pilots that'd like to help out? And if you want to donate supplies, bring them to the airport, and we'll start moving them over there. And so within those first few weeks, we were able to move thousands of pounds of supplies through just volunteer pilots.
When you move this probably doesn't matter, but is it like a supply drop, or is
pretty much
okay?
Like we go over there to these airports, and the cool thing about it is we basically turn these big vacant hangars into these disaster relief centers. And so it's almost like meant for it, but not meant for it in a sense. And so it just kind of falls into place.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on this, the key moment. So you feel like that was the key moment that you knew God was calling to you something big. It's one thing to be a pilot. It's one thing to go fly and like, hey, I want to be a pilot. Most people would do it for recreation around here in Hopkinsville. It's not their job. I know a few pilots for their job or whatever. So you're using this for something different. You're using this for a need that is out there. So Is it the Princeton thing, or was there more to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think God, little did I know all along, was equipping me with these gifts and these tools to be able to do this mission and this purpose, and I feel like it was a gift from God because that purpose found me and I didn't really have to go looking for it. And I was just living out my daily life and I just felt this touch and I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And I listened and, I think that Princeton, definitely December 2021 was when it all kind of came together. And it took time to unfold. I mean, I don't think up until last year with Hurricane Helene is when we really kind of took off. But, just having patience with that purpose too.
It's kind of like one of those go, ready, set, right things. Now you get ready, set, go.
Right.
It's you have to take that step, and I appreciate you doing that. You felt the tug. You could have just been like, let's just keep on doing what I'm doing, but you felt the tug, and you have that action. That's where a lot of people sometimes miss the boat is they have the tug and they have it in their heart, but they don't. They want to have everything lined up and have all the answers before they actually take that first step. I just think that's where I'm kind of hoping with some of these episodes like that is, going back to like Julia's episode, same thing. You have to take those steps, and
it comes back to having faith. I struggle with this. I feel like I need to have it all figured out if I'm gonna make the best decision possible. And yeah, if you do have it all figured out, you're gonna make the best decision possible. But that's exactly what you are doing. You need to let God make the decision sometimes for you. And having faith is where that comes into play. If you don't have faith, you have to rely on yourself, and it's going to take longer to make the decision. It's going to probably not work out quite as well as you thought it could. But when you rely on God for the decision, and go ahead, and if you feel the tug, go ahead and let it pull you. A lot of action can go ahead and start happening.
You mentioned before we started recording that your organization kind of is the immediate response. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we use general aviation aircraft and volunteer pilots. So it's not like we're flying in these big semi trucks worth of airplanes. And we were for Helene, able to use big airplanes over the course of time to supply like generators and big chainsaws and whatnot. But we're basically a quick response unit or an immediate disaster relief unit. And we try to focus on that 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 day time period where no government agencies has been able to or really get in there and do fill the gap that needs to be filled. And so, when we go in there, we are kind of finding these people in their weakest moments, most vulnerable states. And it's right when they're first hit, there's we're one of the first faces they see, unless they're, needed to, with emergency personnel, but we're kind of the first ones they see by setting up these places at the airport.
It's an interesting thought to have, like, emergency response. If you're not hurt, you don't necessarily have to see somebody who works in emergency, an ER nurse or whatever. But think about Hurricane Helene. I was able to go out there. This would have been about a week or two after it had happened, and see how like destroyed a lot of stuff was. I had just had to go through, and I was worried about my route being messed up, and it was, but I was kind of able to see how just wrecked the place was. And though some people may not have gotten hurt or injured or whatever, their whole livelihood was wiped out. And when that happens, we still need to step up and help. It's crazy how bad that disaster was. I'm grateful that there are programs like Props for Purpose that are able to step up and take care of people.
You kind of touched on faith playing a role in some of these decisions you had. Whenever you're thinking about your faith and this organization, as you kind of go into some of these areas, do you feel your faith working? Like, has this organization drawn you and your organization closer to God?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and there are times, we have faith that it's all going to work out. And don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not always a steadfast faith. It sometimes gets, wavering, and it's like, okay, God, we're going over here. We don't have any ground contacts, but we're going, but we don't know anybody on the ground to get these supplies out. And, it all just falls together almost effortlessly. And it's crazy because it's like no person could ever make that happen. And it truly is a supernatural God thing that comes in and connects the dots, even when we don't know what dots are going to be connected.
In Bible class, we were studying Joseph, and he has this awesome attitude that like once he gets sold into slavery, he kind of, I think, has this moment where he's like, oh, I was a jerk to my brothers. I shouldn't have said that. And so the rest of his life is, I'm going to be the best slave. I'm going to be the best prisoner. I'm going to be the best second in command to Pharaoh that Pharaoh's ever had. And then when he's reunited with his brothers again, he says, I'm going to be the best brother I can be. And I'm going to supply them with what they need in this emergency. There was a famine going on. And so the brothers came to Egypt because Egypt had been taken care of, because Joseph had been put in this very unique situation where he was able to distribute food however he saw fit in the best way. And here his brothers come, and he is able to provide them with what they need. And so I think people who serve in a way that you do kind of may understand that. They're like, I don't know why I wanted to fly so bad, but I knew that I was going to use it for God somehow. And I had faith, and I trusted that God would use me in this way. That's what happened to Joseph. No matter what situation he was in, he's like, I'm going to figure out how I can be the best person of God that I can be. And so I see that, or I'm just now learning about props for purpose, but I'm seeing that is exactly what this program is.
And the cool thing about it is it's such a practical love. Like you just show up and it's the necessary water, clothes, food. And it reminds me of this story in the Bible, where the story of feeding the 5,000. And he shows up with a basket, and bread and fish, and he feeds 5,000 people with a basket. And it's like, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but here are my specialties, use them. And it's just providing people with everyday necessities.
Absolutely.
And you don't really have to try that hard when, as long as you are going out of your way to show them Jesus, you just act more like him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of leading to others through Christ, through your actions.
The question why, like, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but you interact with people who are in need, and they ask you, why are you helping me? Maybe they think you work for the government, maybe they don't, maybe they realize that you're just a Christian. But the opportunity to share the gospel with somebody, because you may not even ever get to talk to them about Jesus. Maybe you do, but they're going to see that you were nice to them,
exactly.
that you for some reason showed love, and maybe they got whiff that this was just a Christian organization, and they were just wanting to take care of people, and that seed has been planted.
Yeah, so you sit there and think about even what whoever introduced you to that flight simulator was planting that seed that, comes full circle all these years, these years, who just that little seed.
Right.
I don't know how that came about or whatever, but something that's introducing you to that led to the love of something, and then leads to this calling. I just think that's pretty powerful.
And that's another thing that kind of makes me think of like our aviation outreach, and where we, want to partner with local school systems and just get individuals who may be underprivileged or never have the chance to even see an inside of an airplane. The role of aviation's played in my life, and the many lives that have been touched by that, through God, to get those individuals just to that exposure, to say, hey, this can turn your whole life around. And, your gifts can be used to serve him in ways that you never thought were ever possible.
So what are some of your favorite missions that you've had thus far?
Definitely Hurricane Helene. And one of the ones that was just really neat and kind of shows just how God comes together is our friends, YAPAC is their name, out of Clarksville, Tennessee. They're a nonprofit organization, called us and said, hey, there's a isolated community in Swannanoa that we have not been able to get to, and they don't have water, and there's no access to get them water, but they have access to a creek, but it's dirty water. We have a partner in South Florida that has these water filtration systems, but we need them here like now. Is there any way you can do that? We can't just throw them on a commercial plane. If we shipped them, it'd take weeks, and even if we shipped them here, they wouldn't never get to Swannanoa because the shipping, his parcels were all down. And I was like, okay, let me see what we can do. And there really wasn't a thought in my head that I was like, there's no way we're going to make this possible. Like general aviation planes from Tampa to Swannanoa, like, well, it's just not going to happen. And it's the night before and you need it tomorrow. And I just made a post in our volunteer pilot chat, picked it up within the first 5 minutes. A gentleman came down and said, hey, yeah, I'm actually coming up that way tomorrow. Let me throw them in. How many is it? And so he loaded this little airplane down. I have the pictures of it, to where the door's almost like hanging open, and he loaded it down with individual water filtration systems. We were able to get them to Beacon Rescue, the ground team, and distributed it to these. And it's just the coolest thing to see it kind of come full circle. It's like, wow, these people have water because of us. And it's, just coolest things ever. Just weird situations like that just kind of come together.
It's contagious. The eagerness to serve is contagious.
It is.
And when you've got people that are like, I want to help, I want to do good, that's exactly what happens.
All right. All right.
And so I asked the question in youth group last Wednesday night, raise your hand if you like serving others. And every single one of them raised their hand. I'm like, okay, maybe peer pressure is happening right now. But I do think that that's true. I think generally speaking, people want to serve. They want to do good. And that's evident of it right there. Well, thank you for sharing about Props for Purpose. At the end, we're going to ask the question, how can other folks get involved? How can we help you out? But before we get to that, we've got some anchor statements that we'd like to bring to the audience. And the first one is, God sets the coordinates. Whenever you're, flying through life, you think you know where you're needing to go and you can make the plan yourself, but really, it's God who is pointing you where you should go. When we surrender the controls, we discover a path that's more beautiful than anything we could plan. We think we have got the route figured out, but God is the one that is going to figure it out for us. Go ahead, take the second one, JB.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one is, faith is the flight plan that doesn't always show the full map. And one of these, kind of makes me think about how when we're flying in instrument conditions, basically we can't see the ground, we're in a cloud, and we hear this big voice come over from air traffic control say, hey, we've got a reroute from you. And we've got this big plan lined up on our knee boards and in our airplane programmed into the autopilot of where we think we're going. And we get this voice that says, hey, we've got a reroute, change all that plan, and here's what you're going to do now. And usually it's for a thunderstorm or a pop-up, and it makes me think of, when we have thunderstorms in our lives, when things don't always go our way, how adverse conditions can affect the mission, and, how we persevere through those things and continue through faith to continue on with our journey. And I think it's cool to think about, at the end of the day, no matter whatever diversions we have, in having that faith that we always get to where we're going.
You mentioned earlier about connecting the dots, and I just think both of those. It's not a straight line. It's you might go this way, that way, but you wind up where God expects you to be.
Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. If we lean on our own understanding, we are going to go the wrong way. We're going to fly straight into the thunderstorm, and it's going to be problematic. When we lean on God, he has our best interests at his heart. Even if we don't know what our best interests should be, he's going to take care of us. He's going to lead us the way that we should be led. Even if it doesn't make any sense right now, it will one day.
The third anchor statement, serving is the destination, not just the journey. And think about, it's not really, whenever Jacob is going, it's not the flight that really matters. That's getting him there, but it's the work that whenever the boots hit the ground. I know that you mentioned throughout that sometimes you're flying and you don't even know if there's anybody there to receive, or what you're going to do, but it's that action steps that we take. And then, the fourth one being, every small takeoff matters. It's the small steps sometimes, but you have to lift off. You have to take off, especially when we're trying to fly God's mission. It's just that obedience, and with God in control of the coordinates and God in control of the flight plan, things seem to work out the way that they're supposed to do.
So there's one more passage that I'd like to share, and I think this is cool that Tyler included this in our notes. And on Friday, I was at an event where the speaker referred to this passage, and I always love bringing up moments where I see passages that show up in my life really close to one another. It's just cool. But 2 Corinthians 5:7, Evan Ryan from Newark did a lesson on this passage. And it's a very short passage, and it's a very great passage. But it says, for we live by faith, not by sight. That's 2 Corinthians 5:7. When we live by faith, we are relying on God to guide us. You got your instrument rating. Is that whenever you're flying, but you can't see, you're just having to look at the
screens in front of you.
That's so cool. That's so cool. You have to trust that what you are seeing on the screen is telling you the truth about what is outside of the plane. Sometimes that's what happens in our life. We feel like the what we are surrounded with, all of the noise, all of the sin and evil is going to get to us. But we have this instrument, the Bible, that is showing us, hey, this is what I need from you. If you stay on this path right here, you're going to be okay. And here's how you can stay on the path. And the Bible shows us Jesus and shows us how he walked. And we can imitate that as best we can. And in hopes that one day we're going to reach our destination and we're going to bring a lot of people with us.
Absolutely. That's really good.
So we've had lots of good discussion so far. So as we wrap up, we like to finish with some practical takeaways. We have 4 here for you. First one is follow your flight plan. Just what we mean by that is start your day by surrendering your plans to God. Ask, where are you leading me today? Kind of like what we've touched on before. Just kind of like, let my focus be on the right things. And God, where do you want me to go today?
Mm-hmm. When we're clear about our mission, makes it a whole lot easier to follow it. The second one is trust the instruments. Even when you can't see clearly, trust the Spirit's guidance through Scripture and prayer. We have to trust what we can see, which is the Bible. We can read it every day, and when we are filing our flight plan, it might be worth referring back to the manual and getting a little bit of insight, but unless we trust what it says, we're not going to be able to make the right decision. I teach geometry, and I tell the kids, bring your calculator to class. Calculator's not going to lie to you. It's going to give you a number. If you type it in wrong, of course, it'll give you the wrong number. But if we don't have the instruments with us, if we don't rely on them to give us the information we need, we're not going to be able to get anything out of them. And so it's important that we trust.
We have to trust when you also use them too. Yeah, so it's one thing to trust the calculator is going to give you the right answer, but if you plug in the wrong numbers, and so
yeah, well, they always bring their calculators to class dead, and it's just disheartening.
The next one is respond to the service calls and listen for ways to serve. And we are called to act when others are hurting. And I think this kind of goes with, it's not always when, clear cut on how you're going to serve, when you're going to serve, or who or what you're going to serve, and it's, fortunately for disaster relief, for me, it's kind of clear cut. Hey, here comes a tornado or, coming in, we have 3 days to prepare for it. But getting that out and responding can happen to so many ways, and you just have to be still and listen for God's calling and what your service might do or who you're going to serve.
Lastly, keep the big mission in mind. Success isn't about how far or fast you go. It's about how faithfully you follow the mission God gives you. We're going to have all kinds of things that happen to us in life. There are going to be times when we feel closer to God. There are going to be times when we feel further from God. In those moments specifically, I hope that we're able to focus and realize, like, hey, the mission is still the same, and it is to alter our faith so that it points towards Jesus.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on this all throughout the episode. You mentioned possibly or being more like Jesus, and by doing these acts of service and serving others, we're becoming more like Jesus, and then people see Jesus in us. And I think that's the ultimate mission. That's the big mission. So regardless of what our occupation is or what our calling is, if kind of going back to what Mark said, if we're rejoicing in the Lord always, then we're acting on our ultimate calling, which is trying to share the gospel the most we can. And then you also mentioned, like, just fill the gap. And Julia had mentioned it. That was kind of one of her big things, just fill the gap. And what I mean by that, what are the things that you can do in the right now, the immediate, right? We don't always have to think long term, but fill that gap now, whether it's a small act or a big act.
Absolutely. So, Jacob, tell us how somebody like me who has no experience flying, how can I help Props for Purpose?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest thing is social media and sharing our mission. Whether it's donating or not donating, it costs nothing to share, repost, and spread the word about what we do. That's one of the biggest things to help us. Another one is if you feel able and you're able to donate and help support our mission, please do by all means. Another thing is if you would be interested in a ground volunteer to help, if you're in this location, a disaster hits near you, and you are able, you can go on our website, sign up as just a general volunteer, and help get these supplies that come into these airports out into those who really need it. That's one of the biggest issues, is we can get pilots there and we can get planes there, but we really need people that will step up and get it out into the hands and, people who can take them, I guess. So
Where can we find you on Facebook?
I was at Props for a Purpose, and then our website is propsforapurpose.org.
All right, I'll be sure to include those links on the description. As we close, we'd like to leave our listeners with a challenge. The question is, what is one area of your life where you need to hand over the controls to God's flight plan? Faith doesn't always mean clarity. It means trust. How can you trust God a little bit more today than you did yesterday? What can you give up that's holding you back from allowing yourself to trust Him completely? Lastly, you might not see the final destination yet, but God has already cleared your path. You just have to stay on it. You can turn to the left, turn to the right, but if you're facing God, you're always going to be led the right way. There's one more passage that I'd like to refer to, Isaiah chapter 30, verse 21. It says, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" So, how are you walking with God?
Jacob, we really appreciate your conversation today. I know our audience is going to really enjoy and get a lot from it. We appreciate you being with us, and we look forward to helping out your mission the best we can. All right, guys, so call to action this week. If this episode has encouraged you, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you reach out to Props for Purpose. I can get involved any way you possibly can.
We'll be sure to put the links to his Facebook page and website in the description of this episode. So if you are interested, you can see what they're all about. I'm going to close with a prayer, and then the episode will be yours. God, we thank you so much for today. We're thankful for Jacob and his willingness to serve in such a unique way, but in a needed way. Father, there's so many people that benefit from what he does. Help us to help him in whatever ways we can and encourage him and grow. God, you've called us higher. You've called us to be closer to you. Help us to walk by faith with you, even when we can't see the path, even when things just seem out of our control. Help us to know that you are in control. Help us to know that we can trust you. Help us to be like Jesus, and it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to Alter Your Algorithm.